I was hospitalized for 3 days, and none of my 3 children came to visit. "They're busy," I explained to the nurse, who looked at me with pity. Upon discharge, I took a cab home. When I arrived, I found my children gathered in the living room discussing something. Their conversation stopped abruptly when I walked through the door. The silence was deafening as they stared at me with shocked expressions. I crossed my arms and said, "It's good that you're all here. I need to communicate a decision I made while in the hospital." The looks on my children's faces told me everything I needed to know. They hadn't expected me home so soon. I stood there in the entryway of the house I'd owned for 30 years, the home where I'd raised them after their mother died. Sarah, my wife, passed away from breast cancer when our youngest was only 8. Jack, my oldest, was 14, and Melissa, our middle child, was 12. That day changed everything for our family. I still remember the hospital room, sterile and cold, as I held Sarah's hand while she slipped away. I promised her I would take care of our children, that they would never want for anything, and I kept that promise. I worked 2 jobs for years: my regular position at the accounting firm during the day, and bookkeeping for local businesses at night. I skipped vacations and new clothes. I drove the same Ford pickup for 15 years until it practically fell apart. Every spare dollar went to their education funds, extracurricular activities, and making sure our home stayed warm and welcoming. I never remarried. There were opportunities, women who expressed interest, but raising my 3 children consumed all my time and energy. I was at every baseball game Jack played, every dance recital for Melissa, and every science fair for Daniel. I learned to cook decent meals, to help with homework, to listen to teenage heartbreaks and celebrations. My life revolved around them. All 3 had settled within 20 miles of our home in Springfield. Jack worked in finance, Melissa in marketing, and Daniel had followed me into accounting. They all had good jobs, nice homes. I had done my job well, launching them successfully into adulthood. But in recent years, something had shifted. The weekly Sunday dinners dwindled to monthly, then special occasions only. Phone calls came primarily when they needed something: advice about investments, babysitting for the grandkids, or help with home repairs. I found myself waiting by the phone more often than not. 3 days ago, I was in my garden when the chest pain started. At first, I thought it was just heartburn from the chili I'd had for lunch. But when the pain radiated down my left arm and the shortness of breath began, I knew better. Somehow I managed to get to my phone and dial 911. The last thing I remember before the ambulance arrived was thinking I should call my children. In the hospital, the doctors told me I'd had a mild heart attack. "You're lucky," Dr. Patterson said. "No significant damage to the heart muscle. With medication and some lifestyle changes, you should make a full recovery." From my hospital bed, I called each of my children. Jack answered, but said he was heading into an important meeting. "I'll try to stop by tomorrow, Dad," he promised. He never did. Melissa texted that she had the kids' activities and couldn't get away but would send flowers. No flowers arrived. Daniel just sent a message saying, "Glad you're okay. Swamped at work. Talk soon." For 3 days, I watched other patients receive visitors, spouses, children, friends. They brought flowers, cards, home-cooked food. My room remained empty except for the medical staff. Nurse Barbara asked if my family would be visiting. "They're busy," I explained, embarrassment burning my cheeks. The pity in her eyes was almost worse than the loneliness. When discharge day came, Barbara asked who was picking me up. I couldn't bear to admit the truth, so I said my ride was on the way. Instead, I called a cab. The house looked exactly as I'd left it 3 days earlier. I paid the cab driver and slowly walked up the path to my front door. That's when I heard the voices inside. Opening the door quietly, I caught the tail end of what Jack was saying. "The nursing home on Westfield Avenue has an opening next month. We can list the house with Linda Baker. She says the market is hot right now. We should be able to sell quickly and use part of the proceeds for Dad's care." They were planning to sell my house and move me to a nursing home, without even consulting me, while I was recovering from a heart attack. The betrayal hit harder than any chest pain. "Well, isn't this a surprise?" I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice as I stepped fully into the living room. 3 pairs of eyes snapped toward me. Jack recovered first, standing up from my favorite armchair. "Dad, we didn't expect you home today." "Clearly," I replied, setting my small hospital bag on the floor. "I was supposed to be discharged tomorrow, but Dr. Patterson was pleased with my recovery." I looked around at their guilty faces. "So, the nursing home on Westfield Avenue has an opening, does it?" Melissa stood quickly, smoothing her expensive skirt. "Dad, you misunderstood. We were just exploring options." "For my own good, no doubt," I said, moving to sit in the only vacant seat, the hard wooden chair from the dining room they'd pulled in. Even in my own home, they'd taken all the comfortable spots. Jack's face flushed. "Dad, you live in this big house all alone. You just had a heart attack. We're concerned about you." "So concerned that none of you could visit me in the hospital for 3 days?" The words hung in the air between us. Melissa at least had the grace to look embarrassed. "I had the kids' soccer tournaments all weekend. Bradley had 3 games, and Addison had her dance competition. I literally couldn't get away." "I was closing the Peterson account," Jack said defensively. "The biggest client of my career. You know how important that was." Daniel, my youngest, hadn't spoken yet. He sat on the couch, studying his hands, unwilling to meet my eyes. "And you, Daniel?" I asked quietly. He shrugged. Work was crazy. Year-end audits. His voice was barely audible. I looked at my 3 children, these adults I had raised, and felt something break inside me. 3 days. I was alone for 3 days after having a heart attack. No visitors, no calls, nothing but a few text messages, and instead of asking how I'm doing now, "You're planning to sell my house out from under me?" "Dad, you're overreacting," Jack said, using the same tone he'd used with his children when they were being unreasonable. "We're thinking about your future. This house is too big for you to maintain. The stairs could become dangerous. And you need the proceeds from my house sale because—" "It's not about the money," Melissa insisted. "It's about making sure you're properly cared for." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my decision. While I was lying in that hospital bed, I had a lot of time to think. About my life, about our family. I've made a decision. They all shifted uncomfortably. I'm updating my will and selling this house. Jack smiled, relief evident on his face. "That's what we were saying, Dad. It makes the most sense." "I'm not finished," I said firmly. "I'm selling the house, but I'll be purchasing a smaller place for myself. A condo, perhaps. Something manageable but still independent. And as for my will and finances," I let the statement hang there. The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately. "What about your will?" Jack asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "That's between me and my lawyer," I replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm tired from the journey home. I'd like to rest." None of them offered to stay and help me settle in. None of them asked if I needed medications picked up or groceries purchased. They made awkward excuses and filed out, promising to check on me soon. After they left, I sat in my empty house, feeling the weight of my loneliness. Had I failed as a father somehow? Had I raised 3 selfish individuals who only saw me as a burden or an asset to be managed? I went to my home office to find my financial documents. I needed to take stock of everything before meeting with my lawyer. As I pulled open the file drawer, something felt off. Files were out of order, some missing entirely. My most recent bank statements weren't there. Turning to my computer, I logged into my online banking account. What I saw made my blood run cold. There were transfers I didn't recognize, $5,000 here, $3,000 there, all going to an account I didn't know. Over the past 6 months, nearly $20,000 had disappeared. I checked the signatures on the transfer authorizations. Daniel, my youngest son, had been stealing from me. Sleep didn't come easily that night. The betrayal of finding my children plotting behind my back was painful enough, but discovering Daniel's theft left me feeling hollowed out. The son I'd helped through college, co-signed his first apartment lease, supported when he switched majors 3 times, That son had been systematically stealing from me. The next morning, I called Thomas Wilson, my financial advisor for the past 20 years and one of my oldest friends. We'd been roommates in college, and he was one of the few people who had stood by me after Sarah died. "Rocco, good to hear your voice," Thomas said when he answered. "Barbara told me you were in the hospital. I was planning to visit, but she said you were being discharged. At least someone had planned to visit me." "Thanks, Thomas. I need to see you. Today, if possible. It's important." 2 hours later, I sat in Thomas's office as he reviewed my accounts. "It's worse than you thought, Rocco," he said grimly. "These transfers have been happening for nearly a year, not just 6 months. And there are credit card accounts opened in your name that you didn't authorize." My stomach tightened. "How bad?" "All told, about $45,000. Thomas looked at me over his reading glasses. "And it's not just Daniel. There's evidence that both Jack and Melissa have been taking advantage too." I felt like I'd been punched. "What do you mean?" Thomas turned his computer screen toward me. "These credit cards were opened using your social security number, but the addresses are Jack's and Melissa's. And these loan applications, for $20,000 each. They have your name as co-signer, but the signatures don't match yours." I stared at the evidence, my mind struggling to process this new level of betrayal. "They forged my signature?" "It appears so. And there's more. Your investment portfolio has had several suspicious withdrawals. Early liquidation penalties were paid, which no financial advisor would recommend. Someone used your authentication information to access the accounts. My 3 children, whom I'd sacrificed everything for, had been systematically stealing from me. The magnitude of their betrayal left me speechless." Thomas reached across his desk and gripped my shoulder. "Rocco, I hate to ask this, but is there any chance you've been experiencing memory issues? Could you have authorized these transactions and forgotten?" "No," I said firmly. "My memory is fine. The doctors just gave me a full cognitive workup in the hospital because of the heart attack." "No issues," Thomas nodded. I had to ask. "Because Melissa called me last month asking about power of attorney options. She mentioned concerns about your cognitive health." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. "She's been telling people I have dementia to explain the financial irregularities." "That would be my guess," Thomas agreed. "What do you want to do about this, Rocco?" I thought for a long moment. "First, I need to protect what's left. Can we freeze all my accounts? Change passwords, security questions, everything." "Already done," Thomas said. "I took the liberty as soon as I saw the pattern. Nothing moves without your explicit authorization, in person, with ID. Next, I need a lawyer, someone who specializes in elder law and financial abuse." Thomas didn't hesitate. "Patricia Gonzalez, best elder law attorney in the state. I'll call her now." While Thomas made the call, I sat staring out the window at the spring day outside. Trees were budding, flowers pushing through the soil. Life continuing while my world collapsed around me. Patricia was able to see me that afternoon. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with direct eyes and a reassuring manner. "What you're describing is unfortunately common, Mr. Moretti," she said after I explained the situation. "Financial exploitation by family members is the most prevalent form of elder abuse and the least reported." "I'm not elderly," I protested. "I'm 64. She smiled slightly. "In legal terms, elder law applies to those 55 and older. And regardless of your age, what your children have done is illegal. It's theft, fraud, and possibly identity theft, depending on how the credit accounts were opened. I don't want to send my children to jail," I said quietly. "Most parents don't. But you do need to protect yourself and your assets. From what you've told me, your children see you as a resource to be used rather than a person to be respected." Her blunt assessment hurt, but I couldn't deny its truth. Over the next 2 weeks, I continued my investigation. I spoke with neighbors who revealed my children had been spreading concerns about my mental health for months. Nancy from next door told me Jack had asked her to keep an eye on Dad because I was getting confused. Frank across the street said Melissa had told him I'd been wandering and getting lost. All lies. All part of a calculated plan to justify taking control of my assets. I checked my mail and found birthday cards from my grandchildren that had been sent months ago but never given to me. Cards with drawings and sweet messages saying they missed me. My children had intercepted them, making me believe my own grandchildren didn't care enough to acknowledge my birthday. With Patricia's guidance, I scheduled an appointment with a geriatric specialist for a complete cognitive assessment. The results confirmed what I already knew. I was perfectly competent, with no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. One afternoon, while my children thought I was at a doctor's appointment, I returned home quietly and found Jack and Melissa in my home office, going through my files again. "Looking for something?" I asked from the doorway. They jumped like guilty teenagers. Jack recovered first. "Dad, we were just organizing your paperwork. With your health scare, we thought it would be good to have everything in order." "How thoughtful," I said, not bothering to hide my sarcasm. "And did you find what you were looking for?" "We're just trying to help," Melissa insisted. I stepped into the room. "I'm curious, when did I start showing signs of dementia?" "According to Nancy, you've been concerned for months." Their expressions confirmed everything. They had been systematically undermining me, isolating me, and stealing from me. That night after they left, I turned on my computer to check my email. A notification popped up from a realtor named Linda Baker, the same name I'd heard Jack mention when I returned from the hospital. She was confirming an appointment to assess my property next Tuesday. They hadn't even waited to put their plan into action. They were still moving forward with selling my home, despite my clear statement that I would make my own decisions. My sadness was quickly being replaced by something else. Determination. My children had severely underestimated me. The next morning, I called Patricia to update her on what I'd discovered. Her advice was clear. Document everything, gather evidence, and start making your own plans before they can implement theirs. That afternoon, I had lunch with Thomas to discuss my financial options. We sat at a quiet table in the back of Giovanni's, the Italian restaurant I'd been frequenting for 20 years. "Here's what I'm thinking," I said, spreading out the notes I'd made. "I want to sell the house, but on my terms. I've always wanted to live downtown, closer to the cultural center. There are some nice condos in that new building on Maple Street." Thomas looked over my figures. "The market's good right now. Your house should sell quickly, especially in that neighborhood. The equity you've built up will easily cover a nice condo with money left over to invest. I want everything transferred to new accounts that my children have no knowledge of or access to," I continued. "And I want to update my will." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Cutting them out entirely?" I considered the question. Despite everything, they were still my children. "No, but there will be conditions and protections in place. I'm thinking trusts for the grandchildren's education, with me as trustee while I'm alive, and certain behavioral conditions for my adult children before they receive anything." "Patricia can help with that," Thomas said. "She's an expert at structuring wills with conditions." Over the next week, I put my plan into action. I contacted Alan Peterson, a realtor I'd known for years, about quietly listing my house. I toured condos in the downtown area and found a perfect 2-bedroom unit on the 12th floor of the Riverside building, with a balcony overlooking the city park. I made an offer which was accepted. I also reconnected with friends I'd neglected. My children had gradually isolated me from my social circle, always finding reasons why I couldn't attend gatherings or host my old card group. I called Frank and Bill, my longtime poker buddies, and arranged to resume our weekly game. Marge Williams, who had been Sarah's best friend, was shocked to hear from me. "Jack told me you weren't up for visitors anymore," she said, "that you got confused with too much stimulation." "Did he now?" I replied. "Well, as you can hear, I'm perfectly fine. In fact, I'd love to have you over for dinner this week." Reconnecting with my true friends was healing. They were outraged on my behalf when I cautiously shared some of what had been happening. They offered support, companionship, and practical help as I prepared to move. Dr. Patterson cleared me for normal activities, prescribing only blood pressure medication and a low-sodium diet. My heart was healing well. The emotional wounds were taking longer to mend. I invited my children to dinner, supposedly to discuss my care plan. They arrived exactly on time, Jack bringing a folder full of brochures for assisted living facilities. Melissa had prepared a speech about how I could no longer manage on my own. Daniel still barely spoke, guilt rendering him nearly mute in my presence. We sat around the dining table where we'd shared thousands of meals as a family. I served the lasagna they'd always loved, with garlic bread and salad. For a moment, it almost felt like old times. Then Jack opened his folder. "Dad, we've researched some excellent facilities. Westfield Gardens has a private room available next month. They have 24-hour care, activities, and you wouldn't have to worry about maintaining a house anymore. We can visit every weekend," Melissa added, though we all knew that was unlikely given her track record. I took a sip of water, letting the moment stretch. "That's very thorough of you, Jack. But there's been a change of plans." "What do you mean?" he asked. "I've sold the house," I said calmly. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then all three started speaking at once. "You can't just sell without consulting us," Jack exclaimed. "What do you mean you sold it? To whom?" Melissa demanded. Daniel finally found his voice. "Dad, that's a major decision. You should have talked to us first." I held up my hand for silence. "The sale closes next Friday. I've also purchased a condo downtown, in the Riverside building. I move in at the end of the month." "That's ridiculous," Jack sputtered. "That building is for active seniors. You need care, not independence. Actually, according to Dr. Patterson, I'm perfectly capable of independent living. I had a mild heart attack, not a terminal diagnosis." I reached for the folder beside me. "I have the medical reports right here, along with the cognitive assessment confirming I'm fully competent to make my own decisions." The shock on their faces might have been comical under different circumstances. "But Dad," Melissa began, "what about the stairs, the maintenance?" "The condo has elevators, a doorman, and a maintenance staff," I replied. "And it's walking distance to the theater, the library, and 3 excellent restaurants. I've already joined their resident social committee." Jack's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You had no right to make these decisions without consulting us. We're your family. The same family that couldn't visit me in the hospital? The same family that's been stealing from me for the past year? That family?" I kept my voice calm, though my heart was racing. Their expressions told me everything I needed to know. "Yes, I know about the unauthorized bank transfers, the credit cards opened in my name, and the loans with my forged signature as cosigner. I know you've been telling my friends and neighbors I have dementia. I know about the appointment you made with Linda Baker to list my house. I know everything." The silence that followed was deafening. Jack recovered first, his face transitioning from shock to righteous indignation. "That's absurd. We've been taking care of you. Taking care of me? Or taking care of yourselves?" I countered, pulling out the folder Patricia had helped me prepare. "Here are the bank records showing transfers from my account to yours, Daniel. And Jack, here are the credit card statements for cards opened in my name but sent to your address. Melissa, here are the loan documents with my forged signature." Daniel stared at the table, unable to meet my eyes. Melissa's lips trembled as she attempted to formulate a defense. Jack, however, went on the offensive. "You're clearly not thinking straight, Dad. These accusations are ridiculous. We've only ever acted in your best interest. This just proves you need supervision and care." "I had a feeling you might say that," I replied calmly. "Which is why I've had a complete cognitive and medical evaluation. The results are crystal clear. I'm fully competent to manage my own affairs." Melissa's eyes welled with tears. "Dad, you're making us sound like criminals. We're your children. We've been worried about you living alone, especially after Mom died. You've been so lonely. So lonely that none of you could visit me in the hospital? So lonely that you intercept cards from my grandchildren? So lonely that you've been systematically isolating me from my friends?" I kept my voice level despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "That's not fair," Jack protested. We all have busy lives, jobs, kids, responsibilities. And I understand busy. I was busy raising you 3 alone while working 2 jobs. Somehow I still managed to attend every game, recital, and school event. Jack stood up, towering over the dining table. This is ridiculous. You're clearly being influenced by someone. Who's been filling your head with these ideas? That financial advisor friend of yours? He's probably trying to get his hands on your money. Thomas has been protecting my money. From you, I countered. And the only influence I'm under is the evidence right in front of me. We're trying to help you, Jack shouted, his carefully constructed facade cracking. You're being stubborn and ungrateful. Ungrateful? The word hit me like a physical blow. I gave you everything, every opportunity, every advantage I could possibly provide. I put your needs ahead of mine for decades. And this is how you repay me? By stealing from me and plotting to put me away? That's not what we were doing, Melissa insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. Then what would you call it? Daniel finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. We were wrong, Dad. Daniel, shut up, Jack snapped. No, Daniel said, his voice stronger now. We were wrong, all of us. He turned to me. I took the money. I got into gambling debt. I was desperate and thought I could pay it back before you noticed. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. His admission hung in the air between us. Jack threw his hands up. Great, Daniel. Just great. Tell him everything, why don't you? He already knows everything, Jack, Daniel replied. The least we can do is be honest now. Melissa wiped her tears. We didn't mean for it to go this far. It started with small things. You seemed so content to help us financially whenever we asked. Then, when you questioned some expenses, we panicked. So you decided I was incompetent? That was your solution? The hurt in my voice was evident. We convinced ourselves it was for your own good, she admitted quietly. That you needed care anyway, so it wasn't really wrong to help things along. By stealing from me and destroying my reputation with lies, I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. You're blowing this out of proportion, Jack insisted. Every family has financial entanglements. We're talking about moving you somewhere safe, not shipping you off to some horrible institution. I looked at my oldest son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Jack, you were planning to sell my home without my knowledge or consent. You've been systematically stealing from me. These aren't entanglements. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. Jack's face hardened. Is that a threat? Are you planning to press charges against your own children? That depends on what happens next, I said evenly. I've made my decision about my living situation. The house is sold. I'm moving downtown. What I haven't decided is what to do about the financial fraud and theft. Dad, please, Melissa pleaded. We can work this out as a family. We'll pay back whatever you think we owe. It's not just about the money, I replied. It's about trust. It's about respect. You didn't see me as a person anymore, just an asset to be managed, or an inconvenience to be dealt with. That's not true, she protested. Then why didn't you visit me in the hospital? Why have you been lying to my friends about my mental state? Why were you planning to sell my home behind my back? None of them had answers. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm moving to my new condo. You're going to repay every dollar taken from my accounts, with interest. And if you want any relationship with me moving forward, there will be boundaries and conditions. This is blackmail, Jack said bitterly. No, son, this is consequences. Something you apparently never learned despite my best efforts to raise you right. Daniel looked up. What do you need us to do, Dad? I want to make this right. Before I could answer, Jack grabbed his jacket. This is insane. I'm not sitting here being lectured like a child. When you come to your senses, Dad, give me a call. He stormed out, the front door slamming behind him. Melissa hesitated, torn between following her brother and staying. You should go, Melissa, I said quietly. Think about what kind of relationship you want with me going forward. The choice is yours. She left without another word, leaving me alone with Daniel. I'll pay back everything, Dad, he said, voice breaking. Every penny, and I'm getting help for the gambling. I should have come to you when it started instead of what I did. I looked at my youngest son, seeing genuine remorse in his eyes. Why, Daniel? Why did you think stealing from me was the answer? I was desperate, ashamed. I didn't want you to know I'd failed. He wiped his eyes. I never meant for it to go this far. When Jack and Melissa started talking about selling the house and moving you to a home, I knew it was wrong, but I was in so deep already. I nodded slowly. We have a long way to go to rebuild trust, son. But admitting what you did is the first step. Daniel left that night with a payment plan and a promise to attend Gamblers Anonymous. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. As I sat alone in the house that had sheltered our family for 3 decades, I felt an odd mix of grief and liberation. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. For the first time in years, I was steering my own life again, not being carried along by my children's expectations and demands. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel the first stirrings of hope that something better might lie ahead. The moving van arrived early on a Tuesday morning. 30 years of memories packed into boxes and furniture wrapped in blankets. I stood in the empty living room where my children had taken their first steps, where we'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where Sarah and I had built our life together. "Ready to go, Mr. Moretti?" the moving foreman asked. "Yes," I replied, surprised to find I meant it. "I'm ready." My new condo was everything I'd hoped for: bright, modern, and manageable. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city park below, its trees just beginning to show their spring foliage. The doorman helped the movers navigate the service elevator, and by evening my new home was taking shape. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights come alive. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of possibility rather than obligation. The weight of my children's expectations and manipulations had been lifted, replaced by the freedom to create a life that served my own needs and desires. The first week brought new routines and discoveries. A coffee shop around the corner that made perfect espresso. A bookstore 2 blocks away where the owner, Ted, remembered customers' reading preferences. The farmers market on Saturdays in the park across the street. Small pleasures I denied myself for too long. I joined the building's social committee and met neighbors who quickly became friends. Carol, a retired English teacher, who organized the book club. Howard and Janet, who hosted wine tastings in the community room. Phil, a widower like myself, who invited me to join the building's poker night. Daniel came to visit that first weekend, bringing the first installment of his repayment plan and tickets to a baseball game. Our conversation was awkward at first, heavy with unspoken regrets. But as the afternoon progressed, something of our old relationship began to emerge. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. "The place looks great, Dad," he said as we shared takeout Chinese food at my new dining table. "It suits you." "It does," I agreed. "I should have done this years ago." "I'm sorry we made you feel like you couldn't," Daniel said quietly. I nodded, accepting his words without dismissing the hurt behind them. I'm learning to look forward now, not back. Jack and Melissa were less accepting of the new reality. Jack sent a terse email saying he would respect my decision but believed I was making a mistake. Melissa called several times, her messages alternating between tearful apologies and subtle suggestions that I reconsider my rash decisions. I maintained my boundaries, responding politely but firmly. I would not be manipulated or guilted anymore. 3 weeks after my move, I ran into a woman in the elevator. She dropped her grocery bag, and as I helped her collect rolling apples and oranges, our eyes met. "Eleanor? Eleanor Wilson?" I asked, hardly believing what I was seeing. Her eyes widened in recognition. "Rocco? Rocco Moretti? Is that really you?" Eleanor had been my high school sweetheart before life took us in different directions. She'd moved away for college, married someone else. I'd met Sarah. Now here she was, a widow like me, living on the 8th floor of my building. "How long have you been here?" I asked as we rode up together. 2 years, she replied, "since Harold passed. And you?" "Just moved in last month," I said. After a health scare made me rethink some things. We agreed to have dinner that weekend to catch up. One dinner led to another, and soon we were spending regular time together. Eleanor was easy to talk to, quick to laugh, and carried none of the emotional complications of my family situation. With her, I could just be Rocco, not Dad or Grandpa, or the family ATM. My friendship with Eleanor was blossoming into something more when the next crisis erupted. Jack called one evening, his voice tight with anger. "Dad, I've just been denied a mortgage refinance because of an unpaid loan in my name. The one you're claiming I forged your signature on. This has gone far enough." "I didn't claim anything, Jack. I stated facts. You did forge my signature. This is affecting my life," he shouted. "My credit score has dropped nearly 100 points. "Actions have consequences," I replied calmly. "Something I clearly failed to teach you adequately. That's it. I'm done trying to reason with you. If this is how you want to play it, fine." A week later, Patricia called me. "Rocco, I've been served with papers. Jack is petitioning for guardianship over you, claiming you're mentally incompetent and being unduly influenced by new acquaintances." Despite my outrage, I wasn't entirely surprised. Jack had always been the type to double down rather than admit a mistake. "What do we need to do?" I asked. "We fight it," she replied firmly. "We have your recent medical and psychological evaluations. We have evidence of their financial exploitation. This petition is nothing but retaliation, and we'll make that clear to the court." The next month was a whirlwind of legal preparations. Jack had convinced Melissa to support his petition, claiming they were acting out of love and concern. Daniel refused to join them, which caused a rift in the siblings' previously united front. Then, on a sunny Tuesday morning, Jack and Melissa appeared at my condo with a court order for an immediate competency evaluation. They'd brought a psychiatrist of their choosing, a man I'd never met, to perform the assessment right there. "This is harassment," I told them, standing in my doorway and refusing to let them enter. "My attorney has already filed our response to your petition." "This is a court order, Dad," Jack said, holding up the document. "If you refuse, you'll be in contempt." I took the paper and examined it carefully, remembering Patricia's advice to never sign or agree to anything without consulting her first. "I'll need to call my attorney," I said. "There's no time for that," Melissa insisted. "Dr. Reynolds has a tight schedule." Something about their urgency raised my suspicions. "I'm calling Patricia now," I said firmly, pulling out my phone. Jack tried to grab it from my hand. "Dad, you're being ridiculous. This is a simple evaluation." I stepped back, closing the door partway. "Don't touch me, Jack. I'm calling my lawyer, and if you try to force your way in, I'll call security and the police." Patricia answered on the second ring. When I explained the situation, her response was immediate. "Do not let them in. That order looks legitimate, but I need to verify it." This kind of surprise evaluation is highly unusual. She was right. The court order was real, but Jack had misrepresented its conditions. The evaluation was supposed to be conducted by a court-appointed expert, not someone Jack had selected and presumably paid. Furthermore, I was entitled to have my attorney present. By the time Patricia arrived at my condo 30 minutes later, the building security was keeping Jack, Melissa, and their hired psychiatrist in the lobby. Patricia's legal assistant had already contacted the judge, who'd signed the order to clarify its terms. "Your children are walking a dangerous line," Patricia told me, as we rode the elevator down to meet them. "They've essentially tried to misrepresent a court order. The judge is not pleased." In the lobby, Jack was pacing angrily, while Melissa sat looking miserable. Their psychiatrist was checking his watch repeatedly. Patricia took control immediately. "Mr. and Mrs. Turner," she addressed Jack and Melissa formally. "You've misrepresented the court's instructions. The evaluation is to be conducted by Dr. Helen Marshall, the court's appointed expert, in her office next Monday at 10 a.m. My client will be there, with me present, as is his right." "This is just more delaying tactics," Jack argued. "Dad clearly isn't thinking clearly. He's being manipulated by you and whoever else he's fallen in with here. The court will determine Mr. Moretti's competence," Patricia replied coolly. "And I should warn you that the judge is considering sanctions for this attempted end run around proper procedure." Jack stormed out, but Melissa lingered, looking torn. After Jack was gone, she approached me hesitantly. "Dad, I don't want things to be like this," she said quietly. "I miss you." "I miss the relationship we used to have too," I replied. "But that can't be rebuilt without honesty and respect. Jack says we're doing this for your own good. Do you believe that, Melissa? Or is it easier to go along with Jack than to admit what you've done?" She had no answer for that. The court-ordered evaluation with Dr. Marshall went exactly as Patricia and I had expected. After thorough testing and a long interview, Dr. Marshall concluded I was fully competent to manage my own affairs. Her report to the court was unequivocal. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. I sat in the courtroom with Patricia beside me while Jack and his attorney presented their case. Melissa sat behind them, looking increasingly uncomfortable, as Jack's attorney painted a picture of me as a confused old man being taken advantage of by unscrupulous new friends. When it was our turn, Patricia was masterful. She presented the evidence of my children's financial exploitation, the medical reports confirming my cognitive health, and testimony from Thomas about the systematic theft from my accounts. The judge listened intently, asking occasional clarifying questions. When both sides had presented their cases, she delivered her ruling without hesitation. The petition for guardianship is denied. Not only is there no evidence that Mr. Moretti is incompetent, but there is substantial evidence that this petition was filed in bad faith, as retaliation for Mr. Moretti asserting control over his own finances. She looked directly at Jack and Melissa. "I am deeply troubled by the evidence of financial exploitation presented here today. Mr. Moretti would be well within his rights to pursue criminal charges. The fact that he has chosen not to do so speaks to his character and his continuing love for his children, despite their actions." Jack sat stone-faced, while Melissa wiped away tears. "This court strongly advises the Turner children to make amends, financially and personally, for the harm they have caused. Mr. Moretti has shown remarkable restraint. You would be wise to recognize the opportunity that represents." As we left the courtroom, Daniel was waiting in the hallway. He hadn't testified for either side, trapped between loyalty to his siblings and his growing commitment to making amends with me. "The judge ruled in Dad's favor," Patricia told him. Daniel nodded, relief evident on his face. "Good, that's good." He turned to me. "Can I come by later, Dad? To talk?" "Of course," I said. "Eleanor is making lasagna tonight. Join us." Jack brushed past without a word, his face rigid with anger. Melissa paused, uncertainty written across her features, then followed her brother. Daniel kept his word, arriving at my condo that evening with a bottle of my favorite wine and a genuine desire to talk. Eleanor welcomed him warmly, and over dinner, the three of us found a surprising ease together. Daniel shared his progress with Gamblers Anonymous and his efforts to make financial amends. I told him about my growing relationship with Eleanor and my new activities downtown. As we said goodbye at the door, Daniel hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry, Dad, for everything. I'm going to make it right." For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt the first true stirrings of forgiveness. "I know you will, son, one day at a time." Summer turned to fall, and the trees in the park below my balcony transformed into a canvas of red and gold. My new life had taken shape, filled with activities and relationships I'd never imagined for myself at this stage. Eleanor and I had moved beyond friendship to something deeper. We took a weekend trip to the coast, walking hand in hand along the shoreline like teenagers. We attended concerts in the park and lectures at the library. We cooked together in my kitchen, dancing to old songs that reminded us of high school. "I never expected this," she told me one evening, as we watched the sunset from my balcony. "At our age, to find this kind of happiness again." "Neither did I admitted. "But I'm grateful for it every day." Daniel had remained true to his word, visiting regularly and continuing his repayment plan without complaint. He'd found a good therapist and was addressing not just the gambling addiction, but the underlying issues that had driven him to it. Our relationship was healing, different from before, but perhaps stronger for having been tested and rebuilt. Jack remained distant and angry. My occasional texts and calls went unanswered, or received only the briefest replies. I continued to reach out, not expecting immediate forgiveness, but leaving the door open for when he might be ready. Melissa was caught in the middle. She would call occasionally, our conversations stiff and formal at first. But gradually, she began to share more about her children, her work, her life. She came for dinner once, meeting Eleanor, and seeing my new home for the first time. "It suits you, Dad," she said, echoing Daniel's words from months earlier. "You seem happier." "I am," I told her. "I needed this change, even though I didn't know it." "I'm sorry we tried to take your choices away," she said quietly. "We convinced ourselves we were helping, but we were really just controlling." Her admission wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a start. The real breakthrough with Jack came unexpectedly. Thomas called me one morning in late October. "Rocco, Jack just left my office. He came to talk about setting up college funds for his kids." "Really?" I was surprised Jack would consult Thomas, knowing our friendship. "He said some interesting things. Apparently, he's been going through some marriage troubles. Emily threatened to leave him, said he was becoming controlling and manipulative, just like he was with you." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. And I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want my son's marriage to fail. "The thing is, Rocco, I think it scared him. Made him look at his behavior differently. He asked a lot of questions about you, how you're doing, if you're happy in your new place." That evening, my phone rang with Jack's number. I answered, trying to keep my expectations in check. "Dad." His voice sounded tired, stripped of its usual confidence. "Can we talk?" We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our homes. Jack looked older somehow, the strain of recent months evident in new lines around his eyes. "Emily's been seeing a therapist," he said after we'd settled with our drinks. "She says I have control issues, that I try to manage everyone around me like they're problems to be solved rather than people to be respected." I remained silent, letting him find his way through this conversation. "She said." He paused, swallowing hard. "She said I treated you the same way, and she's right. I didn't see it until she threatened to leave, but then suddenly I could see the pattern so clearly." "It's not easy to recognize our own blind spots," I offered. "I convinced myself I was helping you, that I knew better than you what you needed." He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "But the truth is, I wanted control. Over you, over your assets, over everything. Just like I've tried to control Emily and the kids." His admission hung between us, raw and honest. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he continued. "Not yet. I haven't earned it. But I wanted you to know I'm working on myself, trying to understand why I am the way I am. And I'm sorry, Dad. I'm truly sorry for what I did to you." We talked for nearly 2 hours that afternoon, really talked for the first time in years. Not as father and son with all the accumulated expectations and resentments, but as two men trying to understand each other. Melissa's transformation came through her own children. Her daughter Addison, now 16, had rebelled against Melissa's controlling parenting style. "She called me a hypocrite," Melissa told me during a Sunday visit. "Said I talk about respecting others but didn't respect you or her. It was like looking in a mirror and seeing myself with you." These realizations didn't magically heal all the damage. Trust, once broken, requires time and consistent effort to rebuild. But slowly, over the following months, we found a new way to be a family. Christmas approached, the first since our rift. I invited all 3 children and their families to my condo for dinner. The space was tight with everyone there, but Eleanor and I managed to create a warm, festive atmosphere. As we gathered around the table, I looked at the faces of my family. Jack, still working through his issues but making genuine effort. Melissa, more mindful of how she treated others. Daniel, steadier and more authentic than I'd seen him in years. My grandchildren, growing so quickly, and Eleanor beside me, her hand warm in mine. Before we eat, I said, raising my glass, I want to say something. This year has been difficult for our family. We've faced hard truths and painful realizations. But sitting here today, I'm grateful. Jack looked skeptical. Grateful for what, Dad? For everything that happened? Not for the pain or the betrayal, I clarified, but for the growth that came after, for the chance to build something better. Melissa wiped a tear. We don't deserve your forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about deserving, I replied. It's a choice, one I make not just for you but for myself. Holding on to anger and resentment would only poison whatever time I have left. Daniel raised his glass. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, we all echoed. Later that evening, as the family prepared to leave, Jack pulled me aside. Dad, I've been meaning to ask. How did you know? About the accounts, the credit cards, everything. How did you put it all together so quickly after your heart attack? I smiled slightly. I'm an accountant, Jack. Numbers have always been my world. But more importantly, I never stopped being your father. I raised you 3. I know when something isn't right. He nodded thoughtfully. We underestimated you. People often do that with aging parents, I said. They see the physical changes, the slowing down, and assume there's a corresponding decline in capability and wisdom. But often the opposite is true. We've had decades to learn, to observe, to understand human nature. I won't make that mistake again, he promised. As I closed the door behind the last guest, Eleanor wrapped her arms around me from behind. Happy? She asked. Getting there, I replied honestly. It's a process. You've given your children a precious gift, she said. The chance to learn from their mistakes and become better people. I hope so. But I've also given myself a gift, the freedom to live my life on my own terms, without guilt or obligation. That night, lying beside Eleanor in the quiet darkness, I reflected on the journey of the past year, from the loneliness of that hospital room to the fullness of my life now, from betrayal to the beginnings of reconciliation, from pain to wisdom. The heart attack that had seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning. It had forced me to confront uncomfortable truths and make difficult decisions. It had shown me that even at 64, life could take unexpected turns and offer new possibilities. My children were on their own journeys now, learning lessons I couldn't teach them through words alone. Whether our relationships would ever fully heal remained to be seen, but I had done my part by refusing to enable their behavior while keeping the door open for genuine change. And I had discovered something essential about myself in the process, that I was not just a father, not just a provider, or a source of financial support. I was a man with my own needs, desires, and right to happiness. As I drifted toward sleep, I felt Eleanor's hand find mine in the darkness. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give those we love is the example of our own self-respect. By valuing myself, by refusing to be diminished or controlled, I had ultimately given my children their best chance at becoming the people I'd always hoped they would be. And in that knowledge, I found peace. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to set boundaries with people you love? What did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding the courage to stand up for yourself. Share with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your life and your happiness.